If you'd like to participate in the discussion or leave us feedback, you can contact us at levelupyourgamingpodcast@gmail.com or find us on Facebook at facebook.com/levelupyourgaming. If you like the content and want to hear more of the show, subscribing will ensure you don't miss an episode. New episodes come out almost every Wednesday. Also, please review, tell a friend about the podcast, or share with your gaming group. Now sit back and enjoy the episode.
Welcome to the Level Up Your Gaming Podcast. My name is Aaron, and joining me once again, I have Josh. Josh, how are you doing today?
Man, I'm tired.
Yeah,
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. I'm tired. It's late. Days are ending real soon. But you know what we did have? I know by the time this is available to our dear listeners, I don't know, did you see it yesterday or possibly even today? We did have the Aurora Borealis.
I am going to go look for it tonight here after we're done with the podcast. I did not go out yesterday and see it. I heard that today was supposed to be better, but then everybody we all saw it yesterday. So
yeah, I've got like a bunch of light pollution on my street, so I just got a faint green glow in the sky. But I was playing with my table virtually, and all the guys left and went out and saw it. Our buddy John, who's out in Ohio, did not see anything, but you know, it's Ohio. But I've got a guy maybe 2 miles away from me, took a shot over his house. Beautiful greens, pinks, filled up the whole sky. It was very pretty and magical. And you know, my wife's parents live out in a farm in the middle of nowhere, so they had beautiful full body sky, bright colors. And I just think that, you know, you can have a lot of beauty and magic in the air, and maybe we should capture some of that.
Yeah, no, that sounds great. So let's talk about giving magic a flair then.
Okay, that's a brilliant idea. Where'd you come up with that?
It's the topic we chose before this podcast started. You just happen to segue us with the Aurora Borealis.
You are ruining the magic, man. Okay.
So why do you want to recreate the Aurora Borealis in your stories, Josh?
Well, I had suggested this as so I've been a GM for a bunch of games for years and years now, and I see sort of this different viewpoint in how spellcasters play. A lot of the players I've played with, I've story told for, they get into this habit of like, this is just a tool in my arsenal. And once you get into that habit, it's just like a button you press. You don't care what it does so much as it does the damage that you're asking for. It has the effect that you want. But on the flip side, with a lot of the martial activities, throwing darts, javelins, axes, swords, shields, all of that physical activity, I get a lot more storytelling. I get a lot more descriptive. It's more interesting. People describe acrobatic events that they're doing to take out enemies, and it's more fun than some guy just like, I cast a fireball. Okay, but like...
Yeah, the most destructive spell basically in the arsenal. And it's just like, and it just does a lot of damage to this area, and yeah.
And I'm done. That's my turn. Yeah. I think that we could put better effort into the way that magic exists in these worlds. I mean, magic is the only word that's coming to my mind at this point is magical. And it should be that way. We should.
Thanks for that circular definition.
It's circular because that's how rituals and spells work.
There we go. There we go. Yes. So it all comes back. You're right. I mean, again, this is following in the same vein of improving combat, improving your backgrounds, improving your yada yada. The magic is just another little tweak on your world that gives it more life, that gives it more vibrancy, that lets the whole thing kind of become a more immersive experience. Because there is nothing that says you cannot just tell your story of, I cast Fireball, here is the area on the map in which I cast Fireball, now let me roll my damage. Okay?
Yeah.
But is that interesting? No. The results might be, but the process of doing it is not.
It doesn't add anything to your story. And I think that's the part that was really sticking with me, is that we have all of these elements that the characters bring into the world and interact with in the world, and it should all add to the story. It doesn't have to add to the plot. You can't say, like, I cast a fireball because my dad loved fireballs. You could. I mean, that could absolutely be a thing. But
back on the farm, he used to burn down and raise villages with those fireballs.
I'm doing this for my daddy. No, but you could just, like,
those goblins never stood a chance.
Make spells mean something. And it could be, I started to break down the different ways that I think about how you could have spells or spell casting affect your story. And the first thing is that spells magic is sort of breaking the world, right? You've got a standard world, standard physics, normal things apply, and then spells are an affront to the natural order of things. And in that way, you could either have spells taking a physical effect on the world around them, or on the players, the spellcasters themselves. And if you want to have it so that it like a physical toll in the world, like you cast a fireball, part of those descriptions in a D&D book say that any flammable objects in the area could start on fire, which is, that's a great way to start. But also think about, a big burst of flames probably dries out the air real quick. You might have a rush of wind, as the fire goes in. It could even, suck in the heat from around, or you could have cold on the outside of the fire to the touch. There's all these ways that you could describe the environmental effects of a spell, like a thunderbolt, like a, maybe gets like that static electricity. You can feel the hair on the back of your arm stand up. It just like, you can see like a spark running down a sword blade or something like that. You could really lean into just how otherworldly some of these spells are and how they sort of affect the world around them. Is there any spells you can think of?
No, I to kind of echo on your point, though. I mean, it depends on like what version of like D&D you want to be telling. But if you're telling kind of like the base 5e version of the game, these add a layer. Like one of the problems with the D&D 5e is that there is so much of like an optimization sort of like video gamey sort of feel to it. And in that it's hard to immerse yourself in this fantasy world, depending on how you're telling that story. And so when you're casting these spells, they're supposed to have the might and like force of nature and just everything magic behind them. And so to be able to enforce that with descriptive like effect and having them take tolls on the environment or people around you, take notice that you are casting these spells or you are channeling these spells, they just add that much more to try to get you immersed in these worlds. Obviously the worlds are, we don't live in a fantasy world, but you can imagine that, like, what if you brought magic into our world and it was very commonplace? In 5e, magic's kind of everywhere. So,
yeah. Well, and you mentioned having effect on the people around you, but the caster themselves could have little effects. I'm not saying like status effects or you have to change their roles or make them do something, but like I said before, with like a thunderbolt, you get that static on the back of your arm. If you get a sorcerer or a wizard that uses a lot of lightning spells, maybe they've got like a permanent static shock. You can see like lightning rippling between their fingers as they're thumbing through a book, or their hair. They have a hard time ever keeping it down because the static is keeping it up. Just little things like that. Dark magics. The player gets gaunt, they get bags under their eyes, just an appearance thing. It doesn't have to affect how their character's stats, but physically change them just, slightly with the spells that they cast, because these are, you're doing great movements of power and altering the world in fantastical ways. So it should take a toll on the characters.
Yeah, and it lets the players be able to flex their creative muscles in terms of making themselves look cool as well. Also, to great effect, if the spells are super effective, the descriptors make the spell even cooler. Like, yes. like if you launch a fireball and you roll like insane damage on that fireball, okay, if you aren't doing descriptors, that's big damage fireball. I kill a lot of things, but if you're doing descriptors, I mean, it's like hellfire rains down in the sky.
you can feel the heat from far back. You can see the air rush in. Things burst into flames with such force that you can hear the creaking and splintering of the bones of the creatures inside of it. You can have some real fun with it. It is an opportunity in your game to really flex those muscles, and it should be. And that's just the casting of the spell. Just like the effect of the spell. I was even thinking about you can use descriptors in the actual casting itself. So I saw this to great effect in Critical Role Season 2. They had Liam O'Brien was playing Caleb Widogast, and he, as a wizard, constantly described or frequently described how he was using his spell components to cast a spell. Now, I know, me personally, I don't track a lot of spell components for my players, only the ones that are like the high level ones. You can't just resurrect people unless you've got your diamonds or your gold or whatnot. But at the same time, a lot of those little spell components, they're just little trinkets or little bits and baubles. They can be a little bit changed out to fit the player, to fit the style, to fit that character, and they should. Because the way that the character casts a spell, the way that the character like invokes the magics, can be very personal to that character, can be part of how that character works, interacts with the world. And that is a great opportunity for your players to get involved in that storytelling. And you should really, encourage that sort of behavior with how enemy spellcasters do things. You can have two separate characters, an NPC and a player character that are casting the same spell using similar components, but doing it in different ways and then you can go and make changes to the way that the spell still does the same damage, but the descriptor is a little bit different, right?
It gives personality to the spellcaster if you allow the components to be different or how they're used or what they are. So I don't have a good example of a component here, but let's say you have your standard component that you would typically use, and then you have a darker version of it and a lighter version of it in terms of good and evil side of things. And so if you are a good spellcaster, perhaps you lean more into this side of it. And if you want to portray a more menacing evil sorcerer or caster, then you would utilize the darker version of the component, the more evil version of the component.
Well, I think I'm not certain what the component is off the top of my head because I'd have to look it up. But with a fireball, is use a pinch of ash, and it could be real tight and like a ball, and you crush it, and that's a real tight, confined, well-defined fireball. And then somebody else could have a big smear of it across their hand. They just run it down, and it does the same area of effect, but you can see that it's not as controlled. It feels more wild. And so you've got not just how they're casting it, but that feels sort of like a reflection on their personalities. The first caster is controlled. They're determined. They've got focus. And the second one is wild and dangerous and it is on the verge of breaking things and could be a serious problem. And you can lean into the way that somebody casts a spell, the components that they use, just as another flavor for that storytelling.
Yeah, no, definitely. We already kind of hit on it, but if you're in D&D, magic is fairly commonplace, at least in the current version of D&D. But there are worlds in which you make more of a low fantasy, where spellcasters are very rare or few and far between. And so when that primal energy or that energy of the world and the unknown is drawn, it can add a serious level of aura to whoever is casting the spell or whoever is who you are encountering who is casting a spell.
Yeah, that's a great point. If you want to tell a story where it is low fantasy, it's low magic fantasy. It can still be high fantasy, but low magic. You could have spellcasters in the party, and that's a big deal. And I think that could go either way, right? You could have NPCs that have never seen spellcasting before, because it's not commonplace, doesn't happen. And they could either freak out and think, oh my God, this person's the devil. Or they could think, oh my God, this person's sent from the gods. You could even go weird stuff make assumptions about spellcasters because the last one was like this. Says, oh, you must eat a lot of beans because that's the last spellcaster we knew ate nothing but beans. And that's what spellcasters do. They just eat beans. And that is the weirdest thing you've ever heard. But you can play with that and make it.
They all wear hats. They all wear funny hats.
They must. Hats are how you cast spells. That's
surprise,
why
surprise, it's where you didn't go there first, Josh.
it's been a while. I'm tired. I told you that. But yeah, you could really go for, you know, uh some storytelling chops with how characters in the world interact with spellcasters having never seen them before. They can have weird ideas of where spells and magic come from. I think you run into a situation in games or just in an environment where if it is such a special thing and people are like afraid of it, that really works good for like a good character, like a noble healing, for justice and proper goodness. And everywhere they go, magic is seen as like this evil thing. Um, and that's fun for storytelling. The flip of it, where you've got an evil character that's very selfish, and everywhere they see spells as, like a gift from the gods and are trying to help this person out. That is a selfish person that's things are going to backfire on them eventually. And you got to like lean into that, because if they get their way the whole time, it's less fun.
Yeah.
I don't. I think that's fun. I have done this in some of my games, not with spells, but with items and weapons, where my spellcasters, my characters wanted to forge a new weapon or a magical item, and I don't see why you couldn't do something similar with spells. I'm not saying that, we're going to write a spell and it's going to be added to our game for then on. But you could, if you've got a spellcaster in your team, in your players, and they want to try something new, maybe encouraging them to come up with a new spell and then having them sort of quest to get it, to learn it, to develop it, is an interesting story.
Yes. I mean, of course it's an interesting story, because you have the journey associated, I mean, to the spell. And, again, part of what makes any story interesting is just the effort it takes to get there within your players, or the effort that your players feel like it took to get or achieve what they want. Like, so much of gaming and being successful of a GM is giving your players the warm and fuzzies when like you do a game. Okay.
Yeah.
And that's it. I've gone on this tangent before, but so much, like, I hear people critique all sorts of games everywhere, or give critique of different games, and it's like, and when we tell our give our advice here on this podcast, it's trying to strike the balance of bending the rules as they are written in the book to allowing your players to achieve things that, are really difficult. So, like, your players want to achieve the difficult with just the right level of friction, and that's like what you're trying to get here, is like giving them that right level of friction. Or that, again, when I say friction is not always bad. Effect, immersion, all those things are the friction that gets a player to feel really good about the decisions that they make.
Yeah, I think if there's no or little friction to earning this achievement, something that your players have wanted to do in game, or they come across an environment and it's just easy peasy, lemon squeezy, and they just walk right through, it's not as interesting, it's not as fulfilling. Having some barriers even if they're, virtual, even if like there's no way the player can possibly fail at these, but I'm going to put barriers up in the way and make them feel like they're earning it, makes the player happier because they've overcome that thing, because they've journeyed to that end. They've overcome these obstacles that you've thrown up in front of them. And having a spell as an end goal can be very interesting, because then it's like, what's involved in a spell, right? You have the players describe what they want to do. Don't let them, they don't set the cost. They don't set the difficulty. They don't set the level of the spell. They don't set the damage. They're like, I would like to do this thing. I'd like to do a 6-second time warp as a spell. Like, basically, I'll go back 1 round. I mean, that's a crazy thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
First of all, you'd have to then track 1 round to go for the entirety of the game, which sounds like a pain in the ass. But if it's like a one-time thing, like, you can do this, but at the cost of like a significant chunk of your soul, and here's all the materials and components and stuff like that, then it becomes like that last second, oh my god, we're on the final boss, he just killed our tank and our healer in 1 hit. I'm going to hit the reset button and go back that 1 round. And we're going to do things differently and save the day. It becomes, the MacGuffin that saves the universe at the end there. And they've done all these things to get to that point. And it's up to you as a storyteller to set that difficulty, to set that cost. And writing out their quest to get this spell is fun. It's interesting. It's an opportunity for you to tell a story. Also, I've got an idea that you just like list out possible ways that they fail while they're testing their spell, right? And even if they succeed, you give them a couple of like the low issue failures, because they haven't like figured out all the components yet, or they're missing a thing and they just figured out when they cast it poorly. You can have some fun with it. Make it seem more difficult than it has to be.
Yeah, no, I like the idea of being able to generate your own sort of power set. So like a spell, it's very interesting. I think the concept's interesting. What you have to understand as a GM and as a player is that we obviously didn't write the book, and and so we all think that we're better than we actually are.
Oh my god. Do you know how many playtests some of these books go through before those spells hit that? And how many revisions of the same spells? How many?
I say that with all the love of the world, because like I've come up with power sets and I realize that I'm just not as creative as I thought I was. Mm-hmm. And so like, you're trying to think of like, how do you scale and level the power? And that's the real hard part, like the meat and potatoes of like what makes good world building possible. So like I like the one that you gave there was actually almost more thematic, in that it's a very, very powerful thing, allowing you to go back around. For a great trade-off, you're almost guaranteed to get them to use that in a really, really important spot. Like, potentially preventing a party wipe, something like that. Like, and you could almost set it up for that sort of thing. Or prepare or try to force that movement within the game itself based on like how you scale difficulty and stuff. That can be really powerful in terms of like, ending a game or putting a real exclamation point on like the game that you're trying to make.
Yeah. Well, that's what I'm saying is that it gives you these opportunities for great storytelling, but you have to look for those opportunities. You have to let your players breathe in the world, come up with ideas, and you take those ideas, those hopes that they have, and you need to crush them as hard as you can and make diamonds out of their ideas. Through their suffering is your story better.
Sometimes.
Sometimes. One of the things you said in what you're saying right there struck in my head is that we don't know, we write a rule set, we write a custom homebrew, something or other, and maybe it's wildly too powerful or the other way. And, these games that we play, this is D&D 5th edition, 5th and a half edition, 2024. What are they calling this one?
I got no idea. It's evolving constantly with the new books and stuff like that.
Yeah, but like there are multiple editions before that. I mean, you had 4. We're not talking about 4, 3.5, 3, 2. All these different editions, and they had different spells too, or they had the same spells with different effects or different ways they were rolling. What if you had a character that had survived from before the world was torn asunder and remade, that knows spells from an earlier edition?
So yes, I've played this game before. This most dangerous game of all. It is it's very cool, I think, to see it in a game. I don't know, like, again, this is a you question as a GM. Do you want your players to be able to access this power? Okay, that's the big question. Or do you want it to just be that it exists within the world and thus allowing you to, this version of the spell, but this person knows this version of the spell. And this version of the spell is way better than your version of the spell. And thus, when you go back to those descriptors that we talked about earlier, it's evidently clear that, like, you might be a mage, but this person's an archmage. Okay? This person knows something.
They're from a world that no longer exists. That magics had torn it apart. That the gods had come and destroyed everything. And somehow they slipped through the cracks. I mean, that sort of person should be able to shatter reality. That sounds like somebody that would be really, really interesting. And definitely somebody that, whatever gods are out there want you as the players to get rid of.
Yeah, again, there's the question. Like, are they always something that you need to dispatch of, or is it, again, your choice? Again, warning you that if you let players learn the thing, okay, they will use it. Okay, if you give players the rocket launcher, they will fire it. Okay, if you
yeah. If it's available in the world for them to learn, that can be dangerous. It could be a lot of fun.
I'm not saying don't do it. I'm just saying understand, like, this is how you could take a game that has gone, let's say you have very high level adventurers or something like that, or you've been playing the game for like 2 years and the game is becoming very repetitive or like formulaic in terms of like the ebbs and flows and the natural like peaks and valleys of what you're trying to do in the game. Having some other goals that are obtainable within it, potentially like this spell, could truly like change the game. And also, if you've been playing a game that long, there's a good chance that you're probably going to want to change things up. And so being able to give your players like some next level height of power, or to experience it or fight against it, those are just things that can add that little bit of like the nice little finishing touches to your story.
Yeah, I like it. I've got one last thing that's popped in my head. Spells that have been running on automatic for centuries. Spells that exist in the world that are part of the world that don't seem like spells to the people that are involved in them, because people, even like, you've got elves or whatnot that live for hundreds of years. If this has been going on for hundreds of years and hundreds of years beyond that, or thousands of years, they may not even notice that these things exist. Day to day, it just is the way the world is. Now, how would a spell running on ritual run that long? Maybe even without a caster. And my thought was, you've got glyphs or runes or something like that. Maybe that's just the way that the roads are. Like, the roads were put down centuries ago, millennia ago, in a certain pattern. As people walk those roads, that casts the spell. You could have cities that are built on top of that, or like sewer systems or rivers where the water itself is casting the spell as it continues to go. And in that way, you could have like an entire city is built and shaped, and the roads are done in a certain way. The people that live in the town don't even know it, but it is creating a ward that is preventing, some sort of apocalypse or some sort of beast to come undone. Now you've got a story, because a contractor is knocking down a building and blocking off a road, and it's like a core component of the spell, and it makes hell break loose.
Interesting. I get it's integration into the world and a level of world building that you can add to the flair of magic. Again, use. Not all things have to be, how is this affected within combat? That is like a more of that's a world building side of magic, which is magic exists continuously in this conduit, and like the progress and just like the day to day of people allow it to flow until somebody finally decides to break it and things go awry.
I mean, the other way could work too, is that, these runes have been in place for millennia, but that wall over there collapsed forever ago. And they go and they finally repair the wall, and it reactivates the spell. And something crazy happens, right? Mm-hmm. We were talking earlier about like a low magic world. What if it's a low magic world because all the people in this area have been casting this spell, siphoning off their magic for ages, and you're showing up now, not from the area, and that's why you can cast magic, because there's a ton of magic users here. They've just been walking the streets, siphoning off their magic the whole time. Could be all sorts of fun stuff. Like like family curses. The blood itself is keeping the spell active. Or you could even make like a whole dungeon itself a spell focus, where the walls themselves are inscribed with the runes of the spell. With the lowest levels could be tapping into ley lines of the world. You could have all sorts of fun stuff where you can do world building, magic, and spells that are bigger and more interesting than I cast Fireball.
There we go. I'm going to ask you, because I always do. You have anything else you want to add to this, or is that your point intending there?
I think like I think it's just important that you consider a world in where magic is either commonplace or not commonplace, and how would that affect technology, society, the way that people interact? Like, would we even have computers and technology if we could just, rub a stone and yell into it, talk to somebody? I don't know. It's just a thing to think about. And I think that thinking about those sort of things can help you tell a better game.
There we go. If you have thoughts on magic and how it affects your world, or how you have it give a flair to your world, let us know. levelupyourgamingpodcast@gmail.com or facebook.com/levelupyourgaming. The podcast is on YouTube, so you can smash the like button there, subscribe there if that's your listening medium. Otherwise, we are on all the podcasting sites. Review us, recommend us to a friend, subscribe there, and that'll wrap us up for the week. So for Josh, I'm Aaron. Have a good week, everyone.
Bye.